What you say? Uh,
Relic Abyss. If you're into hand-drawn worlds, bullet hell chaos, and deep RPG systems, Relic Abyss might be the next game you need to watch. Relic Abyss is an anime-inspired, Gilbert-styled, bullet hell heaven roguelike RPG where fantasy and sci-fi collide as a mysterious abyss slowly consumes reality. You play through a survival-style co-op loot package with complex equipment, relics, and skill systems that let you min-max equipment and build your own playstyle with 20 playable characters and 134 unique skills and a full JRPG style story with multiple endings. Game aims for massive replay value. Well, this game aims for massive replay value. Between runs, you upgrade talent trees and develop an evolving hub where that unlocks NPC new systems, permanent progression, leading action, RPG depth, and city building into one package. Developed by Reverse Loop, a three-person Filipino indie studio, and published by Mambashiba Games, Relic Abyss is heading to Steam Early Access in February 2026, with console versions planned for PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch later on that year. And yes, the free demo is already live on Steam. Let's dive in and see what Relic Abyss brings to the table.
Probably is when you have mana or something. Oh. Especially if you're the one doing it. Yeah. Damn. 10 explosions. Personified of, fuck everything in that general direction.
First impressions. The first thing that drew me into Relic Abyss was the art style. It immediately reminded me of Secrets of Grandia, the old school action RPG charm mixed with expressive animation and personality. Going in, I expected something closer to Vampire Survivors, but once I realized this was a handcrafted bullet hell haven roguelike RPG, I knew this was something different, and honestly, it surprised me in a good way. The gameplay loop leans heavily into survival. I noticed early on that you don't get a story update every time you die. You may have to play out the mode multiple times before the story progresses. For me, it took about 2 or 3 runs before something new showed up, which made the pacing feel a little bit unpredictable. The relic system itself stood out the most. I did not really understand it at first, but relics placed on the map actually give buffs. You just need to find them. There aren't really any visual methods explained to them, so there's a bit of exploration and discovery involved. There's also an equipment system that boosts stats. The game mentions dexterity and increases attack speed, but I honestly couldn't see the noticeable difference. Gold investments ramp up fast, so grinding becomes a bigger part of progression, which I don't mind. Balance-wise, the classes felt uneven. Warrior, Thief, and Archer all felt noticeably weaker than the Mage. The Mage early game is extremely strong, streamlining through enemies for the first 4 minutes with ease, something other classes really couldn't come close to matching. The controls were responsive overall, but sometimes the cursor aiming would stop moving on its own, which felt strange, and I mean like switching from aiming mode to normal aiming mode automatically when I'm trying to aim at an enemy that's moving fast on my screen. The learning curve felt neutral, nothing too hard to understand, but I did find myself wanting more ability variety among characters. As for mechanics, I often struggled because I couldn't get the upgrades I needed. Enemies would outspeed me without cooldown reduction for dodging. Some runs felt doomed. Didn't really reach relic crafting, but the upgrade system as a whole felt underwhelming. Nothing about it really particularly impressed me. The fantasy sci-fi blend is honestly really cool. At first, I didn't really know relics were hidden around the map, so discovering that by accident made the film feel a little bit more mysterious. As for audio, I barely heard any music. I think that it might have been broken during combat, so the atmosphere felt quieter than intended. If I had to put the vibe into a word, it would probably be mystical. The replayability is there, mostly thanks to the story progression and a large roster of characters, unlockable characters. But the game doesn't really reward experimentation early on. A lot of upgrades were grayed out, which was really limited to builds I could create. Runs didn't really feel unique unless you had more characters to unlock, which the starter options alone did bring things a little bit blended together pretty quickly. Overall, I did give my expressions, it's basically a 6 out of 10. If you enjoy cute characters thrown into a bullet hell environment, then this might be the lane for you. If I could approve one thing, I'd add a clear landmarker for the map, and actually show like a HUD screen, so you can actually see how big the map is as far as like where you're at, because a lot of the buffs that would come across by accident, they were like off screen or right next to me. Even if it was a really bad buff or some type of buff that you could get, you wouldn't know until you actually went towards it and touched it. Something in the guide's exploration. Yeah, something in the guide's exploration, and I love clear exploration for how stats work, especially for classes outside of mage. Overall, Relic Abyss was kinda hooked me, but only from the hand-drawn art style and the sci-fi creatures, but the progression and the blend upgrades held it back from reaching its full potential. I honestly expected to be more boring than Vampire Survivor, but playing it, I realized it's actually more bullet hell roguelikes than I want. The concept is here is strong, the foundation is solid, the potential is high. I really want to see this game grow and go into something better.
Send a screenshot? Probably. it looks like you just you have to click on one and hit the train button, maybe? Which one are you gonna... or anything? Do you have like an inventory? No. Probably want to. Can you upgrade your dodge? Can you just go dodge back speed? What, equipment? All right. Oh my god, they got me. Huh? Yeah. So you feel like you're not getting anywhere when you die in this game? Like no like progression. Like are you dying on the same level or are you're not even getting like further?